Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Travis, aka Mr. Cornerstone,
and Monay, aka confidently_free.
from the Becoming One podcast. The podcast will begin shortly, but first, we have a quick message for you about Anchor.
If you haven't already heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. They literally take away all of your excuses.
First of all, it's free, and who doesn't like free? The creation tools that Anchor supplies allow you to record and edit your podcast right on your phone or computer.
And after you're done recording and editing, Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more.
You can even make money from your podcast. Now, maybe you're listening to this like, well, I don't have 10,000 subscribers or followers. Well, guess what? Again, Anchor thought of that. There is no minimum listenership.
Anchor is literally everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hey guys, this is Monay Miller, aka confidently_free, and you're listening to Becoming One podcast. Welcome back. You're listening to part 2 of episode 4, Believing for Your Spouse, with the Becoming One podcast. We appreciate you guys for tuning back in with us. Just want to let you know the last time we left off, we were talking about what it looks like, what it sounds like, and what it feels like to be believing for your spouse. So let's jump back into it. Okay, so in terms of the present, how do you think believing has changed as far as how it looked before when we first got married and how it looks now? Like, is the approach the same? Is the overall theme the same? Because I mean, I know we're building now.
Well, let's get your thoughts on it. I've been talking a lot.
Oh.
You haven't really said much, I don't think.
I think it's been a really big, what's the word I want to use? It's been a big pillar, I think, in our relationship in terms of believing for us to become something more than what we are. And I think looking back at how our overall trajectory has gone in terms of this is what we want to do when we first got married. So it's like, oh, okay, we're married, we're graduating, we get jobs, and then that's kind of the quote unquote American dream, the sense of living in the middle class. But I think in terms of having that vision and in terms of being able to see beyond where we're at, you have done, I think, a great job of being able to see how we can break beyond that and move past that, if that makes sense. Because even in our upbringing, I know for me, my mom always told us, you're either going to work full time or you're going to school full time. There was never anything beyond that. And so, like you mentioned earlier, when you went down to Florida and then you came back with this new sense of, oh, there's something else that's achievable and attainable. And I appreciate the whole experience you had, because I remember you were very adamant about wanting to go, and I didn't really know how I felt about it, but it was good that you went, because you were able to be around people. You were able to be immersed in that particular environment. You were able to be immersed in that group of thinking, these people who are millionaires who are able to do this. I remember you would tell me conversations you would have with individuals down there about how they have businesses or how they've done this or how they've done that, and it's just giving you an opportunity to come back and share that with me. And so just knowing, we don't have to do the 9-to-5 gig. We don't have to work for somebody. We don't have to do it and build the way that we were taught that, this is how you build a family. This is how you build a legacy. Right. And so I think in that instance, you gave us a new sense of ability, so to speak, of how to just create and how to get where we want to go. We don't have to, take the same path, the same road, but we can go elsewhere. We can build our own, we can, create our own path. And so I think just the experiences that you've had, because Florida is one instance, and then you went to Virginia, and just the people you connected with when you went to training to do that. Every time you go somewhere, or even just when you went to Western, for example, you connected with so many different people from so many different backgrounds. And then you have me. I went to Grand Valley. It's like,
shout out to Khalifa.
Yeah, Khalifa. I went to Grand Valley, and I didn't have those same experiences, partially because of my major. You majored in engineering. That seems like a major where there's so many different people from so many different backgrounds and so many different walks of life, and you were able to be exposed to all of these different cultures and ways of thinking and ways of doing stuff. And, I still think I had my little small town mentality. I didn't know that there were other ways to think or other ways to do stuff, or, other ways to just explore and live life. And so I was just in this little boxed mindset of, this is the way things go. What do you mean we need to do it differently? What's wrong with the way I'm doing it? You presented a sense of challenging the norm. And so I didn't understand this concept of doing things differently. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. If it's the way I'm doing it is working, why do I need to do it a different way? But you were able to help me stretch, and you were able to help my capacity grow deeper and wider. And oh my gosh. And so I think with that, you helped me get to a place where I could believe bigger. I can think bigger. I can dream bigger, which inevitably affects the family as a whole. Mm-hmm. And it causes us to then pass that on to our kids.
Right.
So I just am appreciative and grateful for all the experiences that you were able to have. Because even, in the midst of, us being in two different places, at the same time, I was in Michigan while you were working in Florida. It was all for the better. Mm-hmm. And if you would have missed out on that experience, if you would have stayed in Michigan, there's no way I can say we'd be where we are today.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely wouldn't be where we are today.
We would still be in either Kalamazoo or Grand Rapids right now.
And one other thing I want to say, just speaking on that, in terms of believing for your partner, you do not at all shy away from knowing, like, when we're going to if you're going to come to me with something, you, most of the time, I think right off the bat, all right, I'm going to say this, she going to have an attitude, oh well, she'll get over it, she'll be all right. You always got an attitude. You might not say that exactly.
I don't say that.
Not exactly, but it's like, okay, I'm going to say this. She ain't going to respond or react well, but I'm going to say it. And so I think just having that that's, I think, what's tough love. I think a lot of people misconstrue what tough love is and what it looks like and what it sounds like. But being able to believe so fervently for someone else to the point where you're okay and you are fine with that initial offense that they might take. Mm-hmm. Because I think being able to be fine with that and knowing that they might get offended, I might even hurt their feelings. That's not my heart. That's not my intention. But this needs to be said because I cannot allow this person to be stagnant or stuck where they're at in terms of their mentality and their mindset, because there is so much more and something so much bigger for them. And I want them to be able to see, I need them to be able to see what I see. Mm-hmm. And you have that about you, not just with me. Anybody who is important to you, you have that I'm going to say what I need to say. And, I'll come back when you're done being upset. If you still want to talk, I'll be back. You have that about you. And I think that whoever is that person in the relationship needs to just know and understand that is such a valuable tool and asset in terms of building, in terms of connecting, in terms of thriving, in terms of intimacy. I think it's so important and so just necessary, I think. Mm-hmm. And whoever that person is in the relationship that you all may be in, if you're that person or if your significant other is that person, just recognize the value for that and appreciate it for what it is, even if it might be hard or difficult. Just know that that's something that you don't want to undervalue.
Yeah. One thing that I did want to say, and I kind of want to challenge you even right here, because you're saying that if you are that person, but I believe that there, in most relationships, there's the more vocal person, and then there's the person that's not as vocal. So I'm more vocal with my pushing, as far as we can be better, we can do better, that we can get better. So I might be more vocal with that, but that doesn't mean that you aren't believing for your partner.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to ask you to do is speak on how you believe for me.
Well,
just because you might not be as vocal, but there are things that you do. But you've given me a lot of props. I want you to give some to yourself.
I'm not good at that. Okay.
That's why I said it was going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I know. So I know you have been working on your book, and not saying you are making excuses, because you kind of look that head on in terms of excuses and why you aren't or what you need to do. But I'm believing if you want to, if you put the work in, that you could get it done this year. I really think you can do that. And I think that the voice that you have in the words in that book are going to just speak to so many men, which is going to impact so many families, so many individuals, and essentially just influence and change and challenge the culture of the community that you're speaking to. So I'm believing for that for you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
But I want you to tell me, how do you believe for me? In what ways? Not what you believe.
Oh, I didn't answer your question.
How do you believe?
How? Like, what do I do?
Yes.
Oh. I think I just kind of take that to prayer, so to speak, because I think a lot of times when I say stuff or try to say stuff, it never comes out the way that I intend for it to. So it probably doesn't really sound like much. Like when I'm trying to encourage you, it never really feels or seems like there's receptivity. And if there is, I can't really tell. So I think for me, I kind of try to cover that in prayer. Because like if I'm like, oh, well, it'll be okay. I don't know how sincere you think I'm being when I say that. Or if you know that I'm being sincere. So like this week, for example, I asked you if you were okay. And I don't even think you looked up when you answered me because your head was down. You said, yeah, I'm all right. I said, okay, well, if you're not, if you need anything, I'll be downstairs. I'm still here. That didn't really seem like an opportunity to say, well, it'll be all right, Travis, because you know that it'll be all right and it'll be fine. So, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, it does, but you keep like slighting yourself. So
how am I slighting myself?
Because you'll say things like, well, I don't know if it's being received or whatever. All that to me is like not answering what I'm actually asking you. And like, I don't think about whether or not you're receiving it is what I have to say as a determining factor in me saying it.
Mm-hmm.
I think about me pushing the bar a little bit, right? So turning challenge into growth, right? So I'm not thinking about, I think about how you're going to receive it, but I'm not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily deter me from what I'm saying. So the one thing that you did say is I take that in prayer. So that's how you go about believing for the other person. What I'm asking you really is, what are the ways? Is it just prayer that you, in how you believe for the other person? Is that how you go about believing for growth or opportunity in my life?
Well, sometimes I'll just, and it's random. I don't think it's just random. Sometimes we'll be talking about something, or I'll just come up to you and be like, Travis, you know what? I appreciate you. So that's speaking to your value to me. Or I might just be talking about how I think you're great, or you're amazing, or you're a good dad, or you're a good husband. So just speaking and affirming you in that way, I think is a way of how I'm believing for you. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think it's random. I don't think. Well, is anything ever planned though when you do that? I don't think it's planned. So I don't think I should call it random. You do?
Yeah.
You plan on saying things to me sometimes?
Yeah, because you can't just pop off and say stuff to people. You have to wait till they're in, like, well, I'll just say for you, you have to wait till you're in the right mood, in the right setting, in order for you to hear what I got to say. If you're dealing with a Tara and a Leah, you're not going to hear anything I have to say. If you're tired, you're not going to hear anything I have to say, right? You have to wait until it's been like a decent day where you're not tired, where you have some energy about you. The kids haven't been acting too crazy. Okay, now we can talk about growth. Because imagine coming up to somebody who just got done working a double shift, or they literally worked for the past 24 hours, right, at a regular job, and now they're tired. Okay, they're ready to go to sleep. Now imagine going up to that person and saying, oh yeah, let's go get this 3-hour workout on. And they're already in the bed. They're not going to want to get up to get to the workout. But if you catch that person after he's done maybe one shift, right, and he's energized, it's the beginning of the day, he's ready to go. It's the same way with these conversations. You have to pay attention to where the person is or whatever, and then you can say, okay, well, now will be a good time to bring up a challenge, because they're more likely to hear me right now than they would any other time. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in that way, it is planned. I would like you to speak on the woman's perspective, or rather your perspective, speaking to women on how to believe for your partner, or what are some ways in how you can be creative in believing for them. What are some ways that you can go about, taking charge in that manner, whether you're vocal or not?
Well, so I guess it kind of depends on what they, as far as your partner goes, are doing, or what they're trying to achieve. So let's say your partner is trying to branch off and start their own business or company or whatever, and they're putting in all these long hours and whatnot. You could verbally say something to them about what you think in terms of the work that they've put in terms of their vision, in terms of their goals. You can speak to that and affirm them. You could speak to what you know as far as their abilities go. If they're doubting themselves, you can point out all of those things, like, well, you said you don't know how to do this, but you've done all these things before, right, and this is what you've done, and give examples of what they've done. If they're feeling unqualified, if they don't feel like they're capable, you can literally use real life examples of how they've done those things.
Right.
If they are trying to, I don't know, lose weight or get in shape or whatever, you could use other examples of where they've shown discipline in their life. If they're feeling like, oh, well, I done tried this workout, it ain't working, or, I'm really trying to bring out my abs and it's just not happening, or whatever it is y'all do. Whatever y'all do to trying to work on. So just giving them real life examples of, they might feel like, their work is in vain, but giving an example of, hey, I've watched you put in work before, and I've watched you do this. I've watched you be successful before. It's no different in this arena than it was over here. If you've done it over here, you can do it again over here, and you can do it 10 times over. I think even just, let's see. So I think being mindful and watching our words too, and not saying certain things. So if your significant other is, let's say they're trying to make amends with a relative or a family member, making sure you're using positive language and not using negative language. So just saying, well, even if they don't, we're not going to focus on what this other person is not going to do. All you can say is, you know what, babe, guess what? You're this strong person, this, that, or the other. What's going to happen is going to happen. But at the end of the day, you've done all you can do. Mm-hmm. You reached out to them. So that's believing for them that they can have peace in the situation regardless of what happens. If they're sitting there, and they're feeling some type of turmoil or they're feeling anxiety about it, speaking peace and believing for them to have peace in the situation regardless of what the outcome is going to be. Mm-hmm. What else? If somebody's about to step into fatherhood, just being able to speak to the qualities that you see in that person and, telling them you're this, you're strong, you're positive, you're a good role model, you're a hard worker, you're loving, you're caring. These are all the great traits that a father should have, and you already have them. And so you shouldn't worry or be, nervous or discouraged about whether or not you're going to be able to do this. It's just an innate thing for you because, these are already the things that I see you do. So does that make sense? I don't know if that example was a good one. But.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like your main thing is, this is just part of your love language, is just like those words of affirmation, telling them and making sure he knows his value, right? That's what you're trying to say?
Yeah, but sometimes it's just physically being present too.
Facts.
Like, if somebody's working and they, got to work late into the midnight hour or whatever, burn that
midnight hour.
Late
okay,
in the
grandma.
midnight hour. Okay, they got to burn that candle at both ends. Okay, just bringing somebody some coffee or sitting with them. And I used to think sitting with somebody was kind of weird, but I mean, it's one of those situations where it's like, well, if you're gonna be up, I'm gonna be up too. So if you're gonna be tired, I guess we just both gonna be tired. So kind of sitting with them in that, even if there's nothing you can physically do, just being physically present, I think matters too.
Yeah.
Or
I think that's huge.
If let's say you got a workspace at home, office space, you working on this big huge project, so you got not your work papers, because you shouldn't touch those. You should leave that there. But just like, sweeping up the floor, spraying the room with some lavender or something to bring a calming sense, lighting some candles, opening the windows, making the space feel bright and airy. Just making the environment conducive for that person to thrive and work and grow. I think that's another way that would be helpful. Or if, someone is trying to, run a business and, they got a to-do list. Well, volunteer to take some of that stuff off of their hands. Like, oh, I see you need some copies. I can make some copies for you if you need me to. Anything to help you manage what's on your plate better. So kind of being an extra pair of hands, extra pair of feet, extra pair of eyes for that person to help bring whatever dream that they have into fruition. So I think those are things that can be done to help, your husband or your fiance or, your significant other to go forward in whatever it is that they're trying to do, and giving them that sense of, I got your back.
Yeah. And I kind of want to just speak to the men about the same thing as far as believing for your partner, because I think that, for one, men in general are raised to see more freedom than I believe women have been raised to. They are bolder about this is of course in general, but they're bolder about who and what they bring, to the table. Like, even if it's nothing, if you talk to a man and he has nothing to bring. He'll act like that nothing is the biggest something. You know what I'm saying? But so it's different. I think that we as men have to recognize that there's a difference, first of all, in what you say and how you say, and we have to really take into account who we're talking to in order to get our point across, for helping that person to believe beyond where they are. And these are just some of the things that I do. First and foremost, am I saying that right? First and foremost?
First and foremost.
Yeah, y'all know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so the first thing would be prayer, obviously. So you want to continuously pray for your significant other, your spouse, your wife, because that's where all of this starts. You want to make sure that you're constantly covering that person. I am a big proponent of the men are taking the lead. So I believe that I need to take the lead in every area. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm in control of every area, but that does mean that I need to take lead in that, making sure that it's covered, right? So when we talk about prayer, I need to make sure that you're covered in prayer, right? That's number one. That's the first way to help your spouse believe, is to pray for their relationship with God, or and just pray that they're okay and that they have space enough to believe for themselves. The second thing that I want to talk to men about is that we aren't drill sergeants, and sometimes a nudge is better than a push. Or honey is sometimes better than vinegar. So the second thing would be to encourage that person, show them everything that they are doing. One of the things that happens frequently in our conversations is when they will say something along the lines of, well, I'm not, fill in the blank, and I'll have to say, well, Monay, you've been doing, X, Y, and Z. You've been taking care of the kids, you've been doing this, and you just rattle off a list. You just basically reminding them of everything that they have been doing. And so you want to make sure that you recognize that they have been doing whatever it is that they're doing. If it's, working on their job, it's a lot of work to just keep the regular job. But if they want to move beyond that, you need to recognize how much work and point out how much work it is and how much that they are doing, just so that they know and they don't feel like that they're being, lazy or whatever. But it just encourages them, like, yeah, I've been, doing a lot, and I am going to make it eventually. To keep in mind, the next thing would be to keep in mind that these things take time, right? Like, we've only been married for 5 years. It'll be 6 years. Yeah, it'll be 6 years in August. So these things take time. There's going to be seasons of life where one person is believing further than the other. And there will be ways of this, throughout life. It might just be a couple of years where you're believing higher, or your belief is higher than your partner's. There will be seasons where both y'all are believing at the same level. But, that's okay, because we all go through things differently.
And I think, because as we continue with this conversation, just as we maneuver and navigate through it, just thinking about how belief looks different expressed based on the individual. I think the longer you're together, the longer you're married, the more you can kind of realize, or recognize rather, what that belief looks like being expressed for you or being expressed for the other person. Because sometimes your spouse might be believing for you and you have no idea what it looks like or feels like you were mentioning earlier, about how my love language is this, and so I might be trying to express it or express belief in your life through my love language, and that's not how somebody might recognize it or see it.
Right.
And so I think just the longer you're together, you kind of figure out how you can best express it.
Mm-hmm. The next thing that I really want to say for the men is, don't be afraid of confrontation. And that's one of the biggest things, because a lot of men get into a relationship, as far as marriages go, and I'll just say historically, because I don't really know about now. First of all, I've been told many times that that eventually I'll be that yes man, where it's like whatever your wife says, oh yep.
That's so annoying that people really think that.
Yeah, it is what it is, but I don't really see it happening. But so that might be a headache for Monay.
Not with me. Now, one of your daughters might be able to get you to say yes all the time. Who knows?
Probably. I ain't gonna lie. Probably. But you can't be afraid of confrontation, because when you're challenging somebody's belief system, you're not saying this, but it could come off as though you're saying that everything that you've been doing up to this point, or everything that you've believed up to this point, was a lie. That's not what you're saying, but that's how it could come off. As if for example, if I say that, well, that's a great job, but you're not using your full capacity. Mm-hmm. Or if that person's been struggling at that job for a while, they're like, well, brother, let me tell you something.
Ain't got nothing else.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But that could cause a confrontation. But you can't be afraid of confrontation and, push forward. Like, confrontation comes with expressing or expanding belief. There's always going to be a confrontation when it comes to growth, whether that's in yourself or with somebody else. If you're growing, then there's confrontation. There's a friction. You know what I mean? Okay, Monay, I got another question for you. Mm-hmm. Even if you're both growing in the same direction at the same rate, you're two different people, and there's going to be some type of friction. So you just have to expect it and try to, just navigate through that as best you can. Don't shut down. And don't put it off on the other person. Just recognize that sometimes, they might not be ready, or sometimes they are ready and you're not ready, or they just don't want to do what you're trying to do. Y'all might be going in two different directions in that area, and that's fine. That's not an issue, because again, you're two different people. But just to come back to that original point, you just can't be afraid of confrontation, because that's a part of growth.
Yeah.
The next thing I do want to say is that when it comes to believing for your spouse, you have to make sure that you're always learning and setting that example yourself. So I can't tell Monay to, I believe that she needs to work out 3 to 5 times per week, and I'm not doing that. If I'm sitting up eating, honey buns and Krispy Kremes, you know what I'm saying? I'm getting my Ben and Jerry's on, my brownies. Oh. Man, we got some brownies and cookies out in the cabinet.
I was thinking about it earlier. I'm not even lying. Yeah. I was like, a couple weeks from now, make me some brownies. Right. They're just sitting there.
But if I'm eating that all the time and I'm not working out, I can't look at Monay in the face and say that, okay, you need to do this. You know what I mean? That's one of my core beliefs, is that, I don't really know how healthy it is at this point. Y'all can help me with that. Maybe I need to go see a therapist or whatever. But I do believe that I need to be the hardest working individual in my home. So if I'm the hardest working individual in my home, then I could then look to my left and my right and say, hey, you know what I mean? We can pick this up a little bit. Or, this is something that I believe that you can do. But you can say that if you're the hardest working individual in that home, which means after you get done working, you can't go hide in the bathroom for an hour. You know what I mean? You have to find time to work through the stresses of life, and then give even more to your family. I think that it's time out for the wife raises the kids. It's both of y'all responsibility, and you need to be present there. So yeah, you have to be the hardest working individual in the household, and I do believe that with everything that I am. The next thing that I would say is that to constantly communicate, over communicate. And that just means that when you say what you need to say, you're probably going to have to say it again.
And again.
And again. And again. And again. But the thing is, everything that is successful, if you think of businesses, every business that's successful, what do you see them do? They repeat themselves, right?
And a great example of that is anytime...
let me finish.
My bad. Yeah. Okay.
They repeat themselves over and over again. Every meeting, they're saying, they have repeated statements. In our company, it's, well, what's the safety moment? Yada yada yada. What are we doing? Where are we going? What are we pursuing? And that repetition of the goals, the mission, that repetition of where you're going is what actually gets you to where you're going. If you say it one time and you leave it alone, then you will not get there. You have to constantly put your vision, your challenges, your missions in front of the person that you're with in order for it to happen. So don't get tired. Just keep pushing for those goals. Keep believing beyond what you are. And then the last I would say is continuously consume information that is beyond where you're at. So read the books, prepare for where you think you're going, and pass that information on. Don't sit around and dream, but prepare. Get the information beyond where you're at and prepare for that moment. And that will help you to pass that information and pass those higher, quote unquote, higher beliefs on to your spouse.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
Well, I mean, you've moved past it now, so the whole example is kind of, missed the moment. I was going to say, when you were talking about repetition, if you think about it, anytime you give an organization, a company or whatever, give them an email address, especially with people who are selling something, they repeatedly spam you. Well, it feels like spam to me, but they send you like emails like back to back to back to back to back. So anytime you're thinking of buying something, more often than not, if you want to buy something and it pertains to that, what that company specializes in, it's one of the first things that's probably going to pop up into your mind. Example, I buy a lot of the kids' stuff from the children's place. So, when you go and you pay at the register, they ask for your email address. I hate giving people my email address, but they ask for your email address. So now, anytime I think of going to buy something for one of them, I think of the children's place. Mm-hmm. It just pops into my mind. Or anything I want to buy for myself, then, those places, I get emails from them. But yeah, so that was the example that I thought of.
Okay.
Earlier.
Yeah. So yeah, y'all, the point that I guess that we're trying to make here is or the message rather that we want to get across. If I could sum up everything that I have to say, Monay, you can do the same, is that we need, one of the benefits in marriage is that you have somebody that can believe for and with you. When you look at your spouse, you should see somebody who is standing with you, next to you through everything. When you are down, they're there to help pick you up. If that isn't the case, then it could be the case. I believe that whatever situation that you're in, given time, care, and attention, can get better. And your spouse is there to help you believe beyond where you are in order for both of you to reach where you're going, because you're two individuals with separate goals and missions, and as well as combined goals and missions. But your spouse is there to help you reach those things just as much as you are there to help them. Y'all are helpmeets, and you have somebody there to believe for you even when you don't have the capacity to believe for yourself. And that's just something that I believe is one of the most special parts of marriage. The Bible talks about that one could take 1,000, but two could take what?
Put 10,000 in the flight.
Yes. Well, when you're married, you have two.
Yeah.
Depending on what y'all into.
Well,
I mean, y'all into some stuff nowadays, boy, I tell you.
Anyway,
you know, with the two, you can do a lot more. You can believe a lot further than you can by yourself.
Yeah.
These are just some of the ways that we use to believe for each other. But how do you believe for your spouse? What are you doing? What are you saying? You know, what are some of the ways that you serve your spouse? Men, what are you doing to lead your family beyond where you are? Women, what are you doing to lead your family beyond where you are? How are you believing for each other? Talk to us.
Messages.
Yeah.
DM us.
Right.
Email us.
Yeah. People, places, things. Anyway, this has been the Becoming One podcast. All right, y'all. Peace.
Be easy.